Hello, in this broadcast, the program time. In Chechnya, the consistent supplanting of Dudayev supporters continues from parts of the city and its adjacent territories. Although today, particularly accelerated activity wasn't noted, the operation is complicated by the fact that Dudayev gunmen still continue to receive weapons in no smaller quantities than what the Russian troops are receiving. This is reported by the head of the Government of National Rebirth of Chechnya, Salambek Hadjiyev. Despite the quite complicated operational situation, the Security Council, which met today in Moscow, nonetheless decided to shift the main bulk of responsibility during these days for the restoration of lawfulness in Chechnya on the shoulders of the Ministry of Internal Affairs staff. The army, as they concluded, had completed its basic work. At this seventh session dedicated to Chechnya, the Security Council concluded that the military phase has basically been completed. Further action in Chechnya will be undertaken by the Ministry of Internal Affairs forces, but in cooperation with the military. For this, units and divisions of Internal Affairs will be involved, as well as the AMON and Special Designation units of the Internal Affairs. The fact that the Security Council examined the question of transferring functions from the Ministry of Defense to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Boris Yeltsin assessed as a new stage in resolving the crisis. After the reports of the force ministers Khrushchev and Yeltsin, this session was addressed by the Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin. The topic of his report was the restoration of the domestic business of Chechnya and its social sphere. That's probably why the position of the government at the session was fortified by the Vladimir Panskov, who recently was introduced to the Security Council, the Minister of Finances, and the guest, Oleg Saskovets, the first Vice Premier of the Cabinet of Ministers. The President had also invited the First Aide, Viktor Ilyushin, and the Aide on National Security, Yuri Baturin. The latter, I'll remind you, had not attended a single session dealing with Chechnya. The Security Council has defined the aims of the new phase of the Chechen operation. They are the social, economic, political, and legal restoration of the Republic, and also to create conditions to hold elections. Today, the Secretary of the Security Council, Oleg Lobov, who does not like to meet with the press generally, informed representatives of mass media about today's session. It was decided that the continued command of the operation in Chechnya, Oleg Lobov announced, would be delegated to the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, and the responsibility of the presidential representative in Chechnya, instead of Nikolai Egorov, who has fallen ill, will be executed temporarily by another individual, likewise at the level of Vice Premier. On the restoration of constitutional lawfulness and restoration of the domestic industry in Chechnya, active talks are underway with representatives of the Dudayev opposition on locations. In order to develop organs of local self-rule, a structure for organs of local rule for the transitional period before elections. At the Security Council, the opinion was expressed that realistically one may set goals in accordance with the situation which is developing for elections to be held in 1995. To achieve this, organs for the interim period must be established. And what types of organs can these be? One of the recommendations is such that this can be a committee of national salvation or a committee of national accord, which would prepare for the elections. For the restoration of domestic industry in Chechnya, federal authorities count on regional support and the expertise of work in Armenia, Tashkent, and Chernobyl. Calculating overall from 3 to 5 million trillion rubles for expenditures necessary to restore domestic industry, we must take into account that profit which will be realized as a result of that restoration. And the expeditious involvement of several companies, and primarily, of course, these companies are in the oil processing field. The Premier stated that in the budget for 1995, such expenditures are already foreseen. Today, in the middle of the day, near the populated point Hot Springs, which is north of Grozny, 2 Russian helicopters were shot down, MiG-24s. Both crews are from the Moscow district, and they perished. Half an hour ago, we were told their names. They are Sergei Siforov, Evgeny Filipyonik, Pyotr Vakhrushev, Alexander Lubchinsky, Alexander Kazakov, Sergei Cherkin. The majority of the territory of Grozny today is controlled by federal forces. This is reported by the press service of the government. Within the ranks of Dudayev gunmen, according to military intelligence, there's unrest and a dramatic reduction of combat spirit. Field commanders are no longer in control. Their subordinates, under the guise of peaceful residents, are attempting to flee from the capital. Federal forces are not engaged in active combat, continue to regroup, and are taking control over individual parts of the city. Clarifying work is underway in those regions where gunmen are still in action. They are offered to relinquish their weapons. From those who ignore those appeals, the weapons are confiscated by AMON personnel. During the last such operation, it was possible to expose and seize 15 kilograms of explosives, 10,000 cartridges, 7 anti-tank and anti-infantry mines. Meanwhile, humanitarian cargoes continue to reach Grozny. Apart from food and medications, construction materials and mobile-type homes are being delivered. The operational groups of the Ministry of Emergency Situations are at work in Grozny, aiding the population and transporting the injured to Vladikavkaz. Also found was the photojournalist of the American agency Magnum, who went missing the 19th of January. He had arrived to the location of one of the Russian contingents and has been transferred to Mozdok. It turned out he was not accredited and functioned in the conflict zone at his own risk. Therefore, the press service of the government again reminds of the need for accreditation in the temporary press center. This allows an escort to be provided. In those regions of Chechnya where the situation has stabilized, cargoes for the farmers are arriving and conditions are being set up to conduct springfield work. Life in villages is gradually being organized, and possibly that's why attempts to recruit gunmen here are not successful. Today in Grozny, the garrison military prosecutor began to function. Its employees on location now will observe compliance with the laws among the troops. Our special correspondents report from Chechnya. Dear Mom and Dad, we're all alive, and we will return home alive. Everything will be well. Today, these young fellows from the Marine Infantry are already in Grozny and are fulfilling the main mission of the day. That is, they're clearing the city from Chechen snipers. They were specially trained for that. Entering basements, they immediately open fire from grenade launchers and later begin to comb through the ruins. The Marine Infantry rendered hundreds of snipers harmless already, but among them the losses are heavy. Each sniper has his own method. Some shoot exclusively in the temple, others shoot only in the forehead, and at night they dump bodies of dead Russian soldiers on the streets and wait for them to be gathered up. The Marine Infantry are working in close conjunction with the Air Paratroopers Division. You are in the battalion number 89 of the Ivanovsky Division, which had the most responsible task during the duration of the entire Chechen War, and sustained heavy losses, one may say, out of all of our paratrooper divisions, the heaviest, but had the most difficult mission. Were you in the effort to take the Ministerial Council building? Yes, the Ministerial Council building and also the Presidential Palace and other objectives. The Hankala Airport, where the aviation was based of the Chechen Armed Forces. Our battalion fulfilled the most difficult tasks. Russian forces continue to arrive in Mozdok, who are deployed in Grozny, but the sniper war in the center doesn't subside. And from the city, refugees continue to flee. Now they are basically Russians. There are almost no Chechens remaining here, only those who support the Russian army. Local residents have gone mostly to villages where many have homes or relatives, and they will sit out this dark time there with their children and wait it out. But where will we go? We have nothing or no one. This Russian woman, we may say, is lucky. First she'll be taken to the hospital in Mozdok, and later we'll help her to get to Ulyanovsk, where her daughter lives. She couldn't leave earlier. She had no money. During 1.5 years, Dudayev didn't pay pensions to the Russian pensioners. Let your children support you, he said. Those who are still in Grozny mostly live in basements. Today in the populous point Hasavyurt, which is in Dagestan, dialogues continued on the exchange of prisoners of war, and there was an agreement reached on the place and the time for the exchange, which will be carried out according to the formula: 1 Chechen prisoner of war in exchange for 1 Russian, with the compulsory medical verification on site. The Russian side will provide also the same number of Chechen prisoners of war as there are Russian paratroopers being held in the populated point Shali, and that numbers 43 people. In Stavropol today, representatives of the republics and Rim areas of the Northern Caucasus conducted a business meeting. There they acknowledged that for the resolution of the Chechen problem, the assistance of neighbors is necessary, and it's imperative to hold a peace conference. Our special correspondents report. Today in Stavropol, a business meeting of the heads of the structures of power was completed, responsible for nationalities, affairs of all the regions of the Northern Caucasus. The most significant question was the first topic of discussion of the draft government program for the national policy of Russia. It was held behind closed doors. At the meeting also they discussed the proposal made by the heads of the Naursk and Shoklovskoy region in Chechnya, who expressed a desire to reunite with the Stavropol Rim area. No territorial transformations in the Northern Caucasus are permissible at this time, was categorically stated by the participants of the meeting. And Meanwhile, from the Caucasus, a flood of refugees continues. The Federal Immigration Services reported today that an additional telephone channel was set up to receive information about citizens who have left Chechnya. Since the 8th of December, the service has registered 146,170 refugees. How many are still unofficial refugees? For now, no one can say precisely. And about those who have left Chechnya, one may learn in detail by phoning 207 3940 and 925 2283. This can be done on any day except for Sunday. From the 11 sessions of the operational staff of the government on Chechnya, correspondents were allowed access to only one. For the second time, it was to have occurred today, but the meeting was cancelled because in the Kremlin, the Security Council meeting was protracted. Incidentally, the trip to the White House was not a waste. Having met in the hallway with Oleg Soskovets, I managed to ask him questions which have been discussed recently in the press about his dismissal from the post of the overseer of the Chechen problems and from the non-payment commission. What is your status currently? First of all, I have the status of the first deputy chairman of government. Secondly, all the work connected with the operations of the staff to restore the domestic industry in Chechnya. As it was, it remains my responsibility. Today, at the Security Council session, we reported to the Security Council and to the President about priority measures to restore the destroyed economy of the Chechen Republic. Regarding the non-payment commission, this is more of an economic category of the relations within industry and society. Currently, truly, it's evident, given the appointment of another first deputy chairman of the government, Mr. Anatoly Borisovich Chubais, and so logically the commission has become his task. Oleg Nikolaevich, there's also another rumor that you belong to the party of war. There are attempts to fabricate such a party of war and to create it and to associate names of concrete individuals with it, but this is a non-existent phenomenon. Yes, I am involved in the war problems in the area of the military industry, but I'm not involved in the politics. And my second stroke of luck at the entrance to the White House to encounter Chechen elders, yesterday hosted by Viktor Chernomyrdin. I'm the chairman of the Council of Elders of the Chechen Republic. Tell me, they say in Chechnya the field commanders are not taking orders from anyone any longer, either from the elders or Dudaev. Do you have any influence? The Chechen field commanders are extremely obedient to Dudaev, and frequently we speak and they listen to the Elders' Council. Do you have any idea how you're going to find them? They're in different places in the mountains. We will find them. They're not in the mountains. They're in the city of Grozny. Why do you say they're in the mountains? Well, there's talk that they're leaving the city for the mountains. The soldiers are going into the mountains, not the commanders. The basic combat staff is in the city of Grozny and is holding on marvelously there. There is no flight or panic. There is nothing amiss. And what can help bring about peace? Dialogues, wise dialogues, to consider all people, if they are big or small, that they're created by the great Allah. There must be a healthy approach to each nation. And this is what has forced us to come here. On the backdrop of the White House, no longer is there the tree, which was decorated with red and black ribbons. It was chopped down. Incidentally, combat in Chechnya continues, so they chopped it down in vain. It didn't help. For the Islamic world, it's very important for Russia to issue a statement that its policies in Chechnya has no anti-Islamic direction. This opinion was expressed by the head of the world community of Shiite Muslims, Karim Abagharhan, today at a meeting with the chairman of the Federative Council, Vladimir Shumeka. The speaker in response emphasized that the policies of Russia in no way are directed against Islam nor against any other religion. In the conversation, the importance was noted of the ties between Russia and the Muslim world overall. The UN Secretary-General, Boutros Ghali, again has asserted today in Geneva the readiness of the United Nations to provide all-encompassing aid to Russia in overcoming the Chechen crisis. However, he noted that events in Chechnya are an internal affair of the Russian Federation. All that we can do is based on agreement with the Russian government, Boutros Ghali emphasized. And the first deputy of the American Secretary of State, Talbot, seemed to reiterate Boutros-Ghali's words by stating during his visit to Japan that the situation in Chechnya was and is an exclusively Russian internal affair. However, Washington and Tokyo view the actions in Chechnya as a great regression from the course of reforms and democracy, a blow to the positions of the President Boris Yeltsin. It's surprising, but for the first time in the last weeks, the rate of the American dollar at today's trading at the currency exchange did not change. As yesterday, it is at 3,988 rubles per dollar. The ruble has withstood, evidently, because issued into trading was a volume of currency which by 3 times exceeded the demand made by banks. But it's completely probable that today's stability of the ruble was pre-planned in consideration of the hearings in the Duma of the state budget today for 1995. Only after the third attempt, the State Duma adopted the draft of the federal budget for 1995 after its second reading. Twice during the day it was declined, and only at the evening session, after Anatoly Chubaits assured that the government agrees with the corrections to the budget, pursuant to which the special tax is reduced from 3 to 1.5%, and that funds realized hence will be applied to finance the agrarian sector and the social sphere, the budget was adopted. Next, the deputies finally voted for the adoption in the third reading of a law to increase minimum salary up to the level of 54,100 rubles as of the 1st of February this year. And so the basic characteristics of the federal budget were defined, with expenditures of 143.1 trillion rubles, with revenues of 169 trillion. The absolute limit of the deficit is established at 74.1 trillion rubles. The statutes of expenditures in concrete sectors for agricultural industry, the defense sector and science will be examined in the third reading. Gennady Seleznov, a member of the faction of Communists of Russia, the former editor-in-chief of the newspaper Pravda, accepted congratulations today. He's been elected the deputy of Ivan Rybkin and will be involved in communications with mass media mostly. The faction, the Women of Russia, suggested today the question be included in the agenda on the suitability of Pavel Grachov for the post of Minister of Defense, but discussions didn't get that far today, evidently. That question will be deferred to another day. Today, the deputies worked very long, and the Duma did manage to discuss the performance of the authorized Commissioner on Human Rights, Sergei Kovalyov, but a decision on that matter was not adopted. The initiator of the discussion of the performance is the member of the LDPR, Yuri Kuznetsov, suggested that the Parliament recommend to the President that he reject the services of Sergei Kovalyov. Further discussion of the matter acquired a non-parliamentary decorum, and from the auditorium, insults against Kovalyov were shouted. The discussion of the topic created such an atmosphere to the point where in the corridors of the Duma a tussle occurred between the deputies Nikolai Lysenko and Alexei Asavtsov, which had to be dispersed by the Duma guards. After that, the Speaker Ivan Rybkin proposed to adjourn discussion until Friday. The deputies agreed. The Duma had just adopted the budget in the second reading today when naturally immediately commentary ensued, commentary by the government. The members of the cabinet view the decision made by the Duma to increase the minimum salary as a fly in the ointment. And if the ointment is seen as the ratification of the national budget in the second reading. Anatoly Chubaits feels, for example, that the decision to increase minimum salary will not last between 2 or 3 weeks. Why? He feels that it's a demonstration of political populism. It's clear that the majority of the funds from the expenditure statutes will be applied to pay for the new salaries, which in essence destroys the budget, whose deficit will grow by 54 trillion rubles. In the new year, the government has entered the battle for the budget. The Minister of Finances, Vladimir Panskov, was told good luck after his brief talk, but he was in such a hurry to attend the Duma session that he barely managed to respond. The Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin called the budget the basic instrument of the anti-inflationary policy. The Economics Minister, Evgenia Yasin, said that by the end of February, the 3-year program of government action will be ready, and by the end of this year, a maximum reduction in tempos of inflation, the stimulation of savings and the transformation of savings into investments. In 1996, turning down foreign loans to balance the budget. In 1997, the enlivening of business activity through the return on investments. But today, already, the government faces a serious social problem. Unemployment, according to certain assessments, is between 11 to 13% of the employable population. That's already the brink of a social implosion. Incomes of 34 million people are lower than the minimum subsistence levels. But Russians will have to further tighten their belts. To the question, will the severe economic line clash with the striving to show quick results to the benefit of some political aims? On the eve of elections, Viktor Chernomyrdin emphasized that the government, despite everything, is prepared to achieve its set goals. We must manage to do certain things on time so as to even have these elections. I'm not afraid to say this today. 3 times there was an attempt to create a Black Tuesday in the end of the year and in the beginning of January. Do you think this is a coincidence? It's far from coincidental. There is no such great alarm which necessitates keeping the people in tension. We have a program of action and we must learn to execute that program. In the broadcast, the program Time, you probably remember how much debate there was over the immortalizing of the memory of the legendary Marshal Zhukov, who was labeled an enemy of the people and also a brilliant commander. Today in this debate, the final I was dotted. The government of Russia has adopted a decision to erect a monument to Marshal Georgy Zhukov in Moscow on the Manege Square in front of the National Historical Museum. Time doesn't heal blockade wounds. For several decades, the wounds are a constant reminder. Like a piece of a shrapnel from that terrible war, it's carried in the veterans' hearts. To this day, they can't forget how they lost their wives, sons, and daughters. In bitter cold, on such sleighs, they themselves transported their most beloved, and they brought them here, where during the war years there was a brick factory. In its furnaces, the dead were incinerated. After the victory, a park was unfurled on this site. Only 2 years ago, the documents were located. 110,000 residents of the city, its defenders. These are the tragic statistics of the work of a small factory located only a few kilometers from the front line. And here today a monument was unveiled. In the wind, tears don't dry, a lump sits in the throat. How many lives did the blockade carry away? Today hundreds of people came here through their modest savings and with the city's help. This stern monument was erected. Live flowers are laid at its base. A high price was paid by our people for victory, but let's remember not only those who are no longer, but those who are with us today. We owe them all our lives. And about an important decision, which in the year of the 50th anniversary victory we awaited fervently. The President of Russia today, by his decree, rehabilitated all Soviet prisoners of wars who ended up in the Gulag after the war, and that is more than 1.5 million people. Unfortunately, many of them, brandished as spies, did not live to see their release from prison camps. Information on the operational reports. The Chiromoshenskaya military prosecutor of the capital has filed a criminal case pursuant to the Statute 102 of the Criminal Code, premeditated murder with mitigating circumstances because of the armed attack on 2 Georgian generals, which was committed this morning on the Leninsky Prospect in Moscow. As Iturtas reported, the former Deputy Minister of Defense, Tutuashvili, died en route to hospital, and the former Minister of Defense of Georgia, Georgy Karkarashvili, was seriously injured and, as the Georgian embassy reported, has not yet regained consciousness. Another earthquake has occurred today near Tokyo on the Chiba Peninsula. According to Japanese seismologists, the force of the underground jolts in the epicenter reached 4.5 points on the open Richter scale. No less severe underground jolts of 3 points on the 7-point Japanese scale, were registered in the city Tiosi. Information on victims or destruction has not been issued. Meanwhile, the number of casualties in the earthquake in the south part of Japan has exceeded 5,000 people. Rescue and restorational work is underway. Japanese television companies asked Russian specialists to organize filming from the space station Mir of the repercussions of the earthquake in Japan. A few days ago, over the region of the earthquake, there was a broad cloud cover area, but today the sky cleared somewhat, and these shots were transmitted to Earth. The city Osaka, the ports are visible. The little white strips on the sea are ships. There are many here. A little further, you can see the area of the city Kobe. The smoke from fire mingled with cloud cover, and you can't see the houses. Japanese television companies will show this film in exactly 5 minutes after the Russian television viewers see it. The orbit shots were commented on by the cosmonaut Viktorenko. A slight trembling of the camera is explained by the fact that in space, the camera operator has nothing to latch onto, and yet this information is priceless. Today, the United States are stronger than 2 years ago. This was stated not without posing by the President, Bill Clinton, delivering his annual State of the Union address to Congress. Clinton emphasized that this is the first such report of a president in a long time in circumstances when Russian nuclear missiles are no longer aimed at America. Our personal correspondent in Washington reports. In America, they can and love to demonstrate unity, even when, for the first time in 40 years, the Democrat president addresses a Republican Congress. He spoke of his accomplishments during his time in office, from the strict law on crime to the decrease of the budget deficit. But are ordinary people in America better off? He admitted that he had made mistakes. The promised reform of health care did not happen, and fewer Americans can afford to pay for a visit to the doctor. Clinton has increased taxes, and who will like that? The defeat at the autumn congressional elections, and now behind his back is not only Gore. Newt Gingrich is breathing down his collar. The new Speaker of the House of Representatives is a Republican. Therefore, new promises. Expenditures to support the government must be cut. Expenditures for defense must be increased to fight with illegal immigration, and finally forced to work those who prefer to live on welfare. The first to deliver an address to Congress in the dawn of American history was the President, George Washington. The address in Congress of the President Roosevelt was for the first time broadcast over radio. In the era of television, the State of the Union address is aimed not so much at congressmen as at the public at large. But this Clinton speech evidently will not become historical. His main audience today is the middle class, the same Americans to whom he promised reforms, who 2 years ago brought him to power and in November turned their backs on him. But judging from the very first reaction, too many see the condition of their country and their own personal state not in the same way that the president attempted to present it. In Salvador, other problems are being decided right now. There, a group of recently demobilized military servicemen seized the parliament building, in which there are 13 deputies. The security forces have managed to blockade the captors on the first floor. Simultaneously, the military servicemen seized the buildings of the Ministry of Finances, Defense and Social Security, where almost 500 employees are held hostage. In several regions, the demobilized soldiers have closed off the Pan-American highway. And so the military servicemen undertook this action as a sign of protest against the government not fulfilling its promise to pay them monetary compensation after the demobilization and grant them plots of land. In the Canadian city of Toronto, a unique operation was conducted to separate twins joined by the centripetal parts of their heads. This is reported by a correspondent of Vitortas. The surgery lasted for 16 hours. 22 physicians and several nurses fought for the lives of the 2-year-old girls. Their parents brought them from Pakistan. The history of medicine records only 30 cases of such operations, but the majority of them ended unsuccessfully. The doctors faced the main problem of creating an independent blood circulatory system. Now the girls are in hospital under the careful watch of medical personnel. Today is Tatiana's Day, which Russian students consider, and not without basis, to be their own celebration. The protection of Saint Tatiana was instituted by the Orthodox Church and marked with the construction of a 2-chapel cathedral. Today, there, as many years ago, a prayer service was held. The Orthodox Church marks the day of the great martyr Tatiana today. According to legend, Romans threw her to be torn apart by lions for refusing to renounce her Christian faith, but neither the lions nor the flames of the fire touched her. She, meanwhile, prayed to God to forgive her tortures and to reveal to them the light of truth. To us, incidentally, the holiday is known for another reason. This day, 240 years ago, the Moscow University was founded. Since then, Tatiana's Day is the favorite student holiday. According to tradition, in days of old, on this day, students students celebrating were not dragged into the police station in a state of intoxication, even when some of them decided on a holiday night to, for example, ring the bell of Ivan the Terrible. But today, the best of the students, henceforth the presidential stipend recipients, were congratulated in the Kremlin by the President Boris Yeltsin. I don't doubt, my dear friends, that upon your graduation, among the people there will be a new generation of a true Russian intelligentsia, and that means that Russia, as previously, will be a great country and will surely take its worthy position in the world community of nations. I wish you, my dear friends, a great happiness, the type of happiness for the sake of which an educated, cultured, and decent person lives, labors, and creates. Thank you. Today we commemorate the memory of Vladimir Vysotsky. The more distant the poet becomes in time, it's clear the creative work of this man with a capital letter is undoubtedly part of the history of our art, and his legacy is destined to live long. History evidently has its own holidays. Tatiana's Day today is also Vladimir's Day. Forgive me, all Tatianas, for the last 14 years. In this time, it seems we've remembered everything and repented for everything. We've dipped him in bronze and named whatever we could in his honor. Even balconies of 5-storied buildings bear commemorative tablets, and such a one of a 400-kilogram weight hangs in the Irkutsk, and with a relief of stanzas. They opened a museum for him where the guitar is in exhibit, and he himself was recognized as the national heritage who replaced his laurels of a rebel for the title of symbol of an era. But yet today it's immaterial because we still all flock to Oganskaya. Although time has passed, his grandchildren are growing. Natasha, Senya, Volodya, Nikita. The boys in old Moscow driveways are now singing other songs, but still, it's the 25th and the day. Do you remember? What day was it then? Yes, it was Wednesday. And in the evening we gather on Paganka, and today there are two and simultaneously two Vysotsky evenings on the former Mala, one of the presentations of the festival called The Time of Vysotsky, and on the former Bolshaya stage, Rosenbaum's presentation of the city routes. But the walls choke us, and we want to open the doors to be together and with him. In the broadcast time, from the official chronicle, as we were told by the informational department of the administration of the president, appointed deputy head of the department is Marina Nekrasova, who will be in charge of the press service of the president of the Russian Federation. The position of the informational department was also ratified, the acting head of which currently is Sergei Nosovets. And more about appointments. At the first meeting of the board of directors of the joint stock company, the Public Russian Television, they've elected the chairman of the board. He is Alexander Yakovlev. The general director is the television anchorman Vladislav Listyev, who was given 2 weeks to present the concept of broadcasting of the new company. Vlad Listyev himself said that he intends to make public Russian television the most viewable, powerful, and competitive. And that's all the information that our television agency received at this hour. Ahead is the sports overview. Goodbye. Good evening. Today the names of the semi-final pairs at the Open Australian Tennis Championship became known. The men and the women both to this point have one unseeded player each, but everything in due course. Evgeny Kafelnikov couldn't unfortunately provide a serious resistance to the second seed of the world, Andrei Agassi, which is proven by the score 6-2, 7-5, 6-0. The rival of Agassi in the semi-finals is his compatriot, the main sensation of the tournament, Aaron Krickstein, who defeated Jack Elting. Previously, he had defeated Muster, Korda, and Edberg, and so the semi-finals will be purely American. Among the women, unexpected was the successful performance and the entry into the semi-finals of the American Miriam Weldrell. She'll now play Conchita Martinez, and in the other group, the semi-finalists Aranka Sanchez will meet with Mary Pierce. The famous Chris Everett, who 18 times won the Grand Slam tournaments, twice in Australia incidentally, was elected to Tennis's Hall of Fame, which is in Newport, the United States. In the Spanish Sierra Nevada, where next Monday the World Alpine Skiing Championships should begin, nature has finally been generous with snowfall, and evidently slopes will be ready for the start. You're watching fragments of the NHL Championships match. Calgary-St. Louis, the Canadian team, won 6-4. One of the goals was scored by the Russian Herman Titov. And finally, scoring his first goal of the season is Pavel Bure, but his Vancouver lost to Detroit 3-6. The finalists of the Standing Club have begun the season unsuccessfully, 1 point in 3 matches. And finally, Andrei Kovalenko, with his goal, made his contribution to Quebec's victory over Washington 5-1. At the Monte Carlo rally, a change in the leaders after today's racing. Ahead is the world champion of several times, the Spaniard Carl Sainz, on a Subaru. Good evening. A broad cyclone with a center over Norway tomorrow will define the weather on the majority of the European part of Russia. Therefore, in the northwestern region, in Karelia, their Hangest district, and on the Kola Peninsula, it will be cloudy with periods of snow. Temperatures from 0 to -5. On the Kola Peninsula, -4 to 8. In the Nenetsk Autonomous District and in the Republic of Komi, there is prevalence of cloudy skies with snows and light blizzards. Temperatures from -8 to 13 in the northeast of Komi, down to -15. It's warmer in the Volgovatsk area, -4 to 8. In the Kaliningrad district in the republics of the Baltic, it will remain cloudy and quite humid, temperatures of -1 to +4. In the central and central Chernozem area, there will be thick cloud cover with some light snow in the morning hours. Fog is possible. During the day, 0 -5. On the central and lower Volga, in the zone of a lethargic atmospheric front, snow, blizzards with icy road conditions, temperatures of -2 to 5. On the lower Don, in the Stavropol-Krasnodar Rim areas, in the republics of the Northern Caucasus, in an area of lowered pressure and atmospheric fronts, cloudy weather with snow and rain. In the morning and evening hours, fog. In northern Ossetia and Ingushetia, -1 +3. In the Chechen Republic, Dagestan, Stavropol, and the lower Don, around 0. On the Black Sea coast of the Krasnodar Rim area, partly cloudy skies with some light rain. Temperatures +3 to 6 around Sochi, up to +9 degrees. In Ukraine and Moldova, in the zone of an atmospheric front, the day will be cloudy with some rain and patches of fog. Temperatures of +3 to 8. Beyond the Caucasus, partly cloudy skies without precipitation. Temperatures of +3 to 8. In Armenia, -1 +3. In St. Petersburg, tomorrow it will be cloudy with some light snow. During the day, -1 to 3. In Moscow, variably cloudy skies. In the morning and evening hours, patches of fog. At night, -2 to 4. Throughout the district, down to -7. During the day, 0 -2. The roads are icy. Be careful. The forecast was compiled on the information of the Oceanic Meteorological Center of Russia. All the best.